everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have kind of a new series that I want to kind of start with you guys. I'm not sure how regular the series will be, but it's a series that I want to do, which is I want to start taking the original pieces in my collection and I want to start quantifying the evidence for you all to help give you all actual tangible information on how Victorian and Edwardian garments were constructed during the period. Because as much as I love good primary source sewing manuals and books and magazines and cutting and drafting, it's so good, I love that stuff. There's something very different from what the book tells you to do versus what they actually did. And so what I want to start doing with you all is I want to start sharing what these makers actually did, what we see these makers do time and time again over the course of basically the entire 19th century. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with my collection, I have been collecting aggressively for a year or so. And the other week, Chrissy and Nicole actually came over and they helped me basically create a database and properly accession the pieces that I have in my collection because it has grown so much so quickly over the course of the year. It was unwieldy. It's 7:32. We've had dinner. We're back at it. We'll see how long this takes.
We've reached the epitome of the black hole of black skirts.
So many black skirts, why?
So many black skirts.
It was such a cool color. No, black. It's the blue jeans of the 1890s.
And from there, I was able to really understand how much I actually have in my collection. And it turns out I have basically right around 100 pieces in my collection. And these pieces date from 1825 to 1925. So I have a lot. The 5 things that I want to talk about today when it comes to Victorian dressmaking techniques are things that I see roughly from the 1850 range to the 1900 range. So it is over the broad Victorian era. It is not just like only bustle period or only 1890s or only this. It is kind of the overview of just things and techniques and materials used that we see throughout basically the 19th century or most of the 19th century. Oh my God, really? Another one? Bye-bye. I just kind of want to share things with you all in a different way other than just like, oh my
gosh, look at this pretty dress that I bought.
There's a lot here and there's a lot of information to be gained from my collection, and that's what I want to share with you all. Today is the start of a new series, which is basically going to be the 5 basic, 5 dressmaking tips from the Victorian era. Let's call it that. Let me try this again so that way we can add some audio effect. 5 dressmaking techniques and tips and tricks. Nope, that was not it either. 5 Victorian dressmaking tips and tricks. No, that wasn't right. How did I say it that first time? 5 dressmaking tips from the Victorian era. Let's call it that.
5 tips and tricks from the Victorian era for dressmaking. Well, I had it and it was so good.
5 basic tips and tricks to improve your Victorian dressmaking. Okay, that's fine. So the evidence that I'm presenting or the statements that I'm presenting are based off of not just one piece in my collection, but multiple pieces in my collection. So that way we're able to identify it as a thing and not just an outlier. First, this video has been generously sponsored by Fetch Rewards. What this means is it is time for the exasperated grocery shopping, stay at home, work from home version of Abby to explain to you about Fetch Rewards. So today's video has been generously sponsored by Fetch Rewards. And Fetch Rewards is a phone app that is super easy to use and is one of the easiest ways to save money while you're out shopping or at your favorite restaurant, because Fetch works with receipts from any store or restaurant, both online and in person. All you have to do is take your receipt, scan your receipt, and voila, you have points. Those points can be used for gift cards from loads of different retailers like Target, Starbucks, and Sephora, which are my top 3 picks. Additionally, if you are someone who likes to shop online, like Amazon, you can actually use your Amazon receipts as well to count towards your Fetch Rewards points. Super duper easy to use, like 1, 2, 3. You shop, you scan, you get some points, and there you go. So I mean, what's not to love? It's free to sign up, it's super easy to use. And I mean, when you like to shop a lot, you might as well get something back, right? So check out the link in the description below or download the app and use the promo code ABBY to get 4,000 points off of your first scan receipt. And with that, I'm going to unpack my groceries and let you all get back to the 5 Victorian dressmaking tips and techniques. And I want to say a huge thank you to Fetch for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it.
It has pockets. Pockets.
The bigger the skirt, the bigger the pocket. I think, and we've seen a lot of clickbait articles about how like pockets are a sign of the patriarchy and women didn't have pockets and how did women function? Oh, you guys know what article I'm talking about. It always makes the rounds, like every now and then you're just kind of like, oh my God, this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever read in my entire life. And also the reason why it's dumb is because it's not true.
You sit on a throne of lies.
The skirts that I have in my collection, a lot of them have pockets, lots of them. And that's because they're so big and they're so full and they don't sit close to the body that it's really easy to put a pocket inside of it. And what I want you all to take home from this is that pockets are normal, pockets are common, and that if you're making anything in the Victorian era, it doesn't matter. You can put and should put a pocket in it. And it's not a tiny pocket either. It's not like a little bitty baby watch pocket. Like, it's not the pockets that we deal with in our jeans or our leggings or anything like that today. No. These pockets are iPhone 12 Pro Max pockets and a snack pocket. And they're really simple. They're hidden usually amongst pleats or at seam points. They're just there. Some of them are more easily accessible than others. I have some bustle skirts where the pocket is just in a really awkward location that you're just like, okay, she must have just been like sitting there like digging and trying to find it. Usually they're just made out of the same plain cotton that the lining of the bodice would have been made out of, or just some cotton scraps laying around. Nothing special, nothing fancy. They are, however, big. I think that's the one thing I really want you guys to take home is that they're big pockets. Put big functional pockets in your skirts. It's okay. It's a good idea and it's historically correct.
At the club, I pop my collar to all my folks with love.
Tip number 2. This one surprises me. I did not expect this until I started looking at my originals. Does your bodice have a collar? Leave it detached or just tack it into place. Even this one has it, but when I was looking at pieces that have really cool fancy collars, what I found is that when they were making the bodice, what they would do is they would completely finish the neckline in a bias binding, and then they would have made the collar up separately, and then they either tacked the collar on with like spaced back stitches or whip stitches to the bodice all the way around, so it's there, it's secure, it's stitched down, or they actually just tacked it down in one spot, and then they would use a series of hooks and eyes to hold it into place. The option that you would choose depends, I think, mostly on what era we're working in. So if we're talking about an 1870s bustle era bodice, it might have just been tacked into place in a couple of spots. Not everywhere, but just like maybe in the front and just kind of left loose, or tacked all the way around like this collar is for late 1890s. Or if you're looking at those really great early to mid 1890s collars that are super wacky and you have a center front closing bodice, but the collar actually closes in the back. And so what I really loved about this was the fact that, and maybe this is just me, it could just be me, like maybe, but it's like, well, if I thought this through in this way, then I'm sure someone else did. So for some of you, you might be like, well, yeah, duh, Abby, and other people be like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I've always been overwhelmed by collars because I've always felt like they had to be attached, and then it's like, well, what's the best way to attach them so they lay correctly and they're not like awkward or uneven and you're trying to stitch them down, and like if they're decorative and then they're like bulky and it's just kind of hard to get in there and you're just like, oh my God, this isn't looking the way that I wanted to and I don't know what to do and it's really confusing and I just don't know how to deal with all of this. And the reality is like, well, you don't have to deal with it. And I think that's the thing, is it's actually really easy to deal with collars when they're not integral to the bodice. So if you're struggling with collars, or even with modern clothes, if you're struggling with collars, don't make it harder for yourself. Finish the neckline edge and then just tack one on. It's all good. It's fine. This doesn't go for every collar. Like, there are definitely collars I have in my collection on bodices that are integral and completely stitched nicely like you would think they'd be attached, but I also have plenty that are not. So it is a personal choice. I guess just for me, and what I want to relay to you all is just, you have the choice. And both choices are perfectly acceptable, and you just might find one that's more easy to do than the other, and that's great.
Layers and layers of costume.
And this one's probably the most important one. And this one is multifaceted. So we're gonna go through this like bit by bit here. Utilizing your lining and your layers. The reason that these are bunched together is because your lining and your layering for structure in your bodice or your skirts are usually the same fabric. The fabric that is far and away the most common for every bodice for my skirts is going to be a plain brown, ugly, polished cotton. It ain't pretty, it ain't fancy, it's just brown cotton. And it's usually glazed, so it's what you could also call a chintz, and so it has a glazed finishing on it. It has a nice kind of stiff feel to it, even if it's lighter weight. The weights of the fabric used in these cottons could be very lightweight. It also could be a little bit heavier to meet, like more medium weight versus heavyweight. It just sort of depends, but it's like 90% the same brown cotton for almost 100 years. Like, it's kind of wild. They don't really change it once we get into the 19th century. The exception to these rules is sometimes I will find mattress ticking fabric, so cotton ticking, or sometimes it might have a stripe woven into it or something a little bit more decorative and fancy, but usually it says plain brown cotton, regardless of how quote unquote fancy you think the garment is. The other exception to this rule is if it's a couture piece, and I am gonna do a video talking about like homemade and locally made versus like designer couture pieces and what we see done differently. But for my couture pieces, especially in the Edwardian era, their linings are usually silk taffeta, which actually isn't that great because my couture pieces are usually in horrific shape in the bodices versus stuff like this, which is much more structurally sound in the linings. Now, the exception to that rule, again, there's linings, but if we're going to something a little bit fancier, a little bit sheer, a little bit softer in the turn of the century, to the turn of the 20th century, we're still gonna see things lined and we're still gonna see things flat lined, but they're just gonna be out of a lighter weight fabric to be similar to the outer fabric used. So if something's a very sheer cotton or China weight silk, the lining fabric is gonna be a little bit lighter weight to match more with the drape and the hang of that lighter material. And that's normal and that's to be expected and that makes sense logically. But for most things, it's brown cotton. Like, I kid you not, guys, if you wanna make cool Victorian clothes like from 1850 to 1890, just buy your weight in brown polished cotton. It'll work for like everything. The other thing about linings and layers is that the way that bodices are constructed are the bodices are fit out of that polished cotton to the body first, and then the outer fabric is built over top of it. That's what's happening in this bodice as well. This is normal. This kind of fitting the bodice and building the fashion fabric over top of it is something that you see in the 18th century as well. It's a very effective way to build garments, especially if you have draping or swagging or anything like that. So the structure underneath is what is fitted to the body. It's much easier to work with if it's a single layer fabric, and then everything's built over top of that. Now, when it comes to putting these things together, what happens is you flat line. So the pieces where it's like smooth in the back and like the side seams, those pieces are going to be flat lined together. Now, what that means is that you're going to treat the outer fabric and the lining fabric as one fabric, essentially, and they're going to be put together. The seams are going to be stitched together that way. It's treated as one entity instead of like a bag lining, if you will. Now, when it comes to bag linings, those don't exist. Don't do them. Completely unnecessary. The lining on the inside, that flat lining, is all that you see. That's all that's there. That's it. Now, the raw edges, some of you might be worried about. It's not a big deal. There are multiple ways to finish those raw edges on the inside during the period, and I've seen all of the different ways. They all hold up just fine. So it's really up to you. The raw edges are a non-issue, entirely a non-issue. So don't worry about that either. What's interesting is when you see a good sturdy cotton in the bodice section, almost always the sleeves are lined in a similar color, but a lighter weight fabric. And so you don't have to use the same cotton for your bodice as for your sleeves. And honestly, that makes sense because with sleeves, you have the mobility and you don't want to add extra bulk in your sleeves. You want it to kind of be as thin as possible so that way you can have them nice and fit, but you have movement. So usually the sleeve linings are a lighter weight version of what's used for the bodice. They don't have to match in color. It's not a big deal. Like, just use scrap. And when it comes to the skirts, what you're going to see is you're going to see polished cotton being used for either flat lining or actually just creating the skirt shape and building the skirt, and then you apply the silk over top of that. Or you're going to see tarlatan used. Especially what I've seen with my tarlatan is that it's used in kind of fancier skirts being worn for the 1860s and 70s. Now, when I say skirts, I'm talking about the visible lower body garment. I'm not talking about under petticoats or petticoats, if you will. Those single layer, cotton, linen, silk, wool, doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about exterior garments, things that we see on the body. So those are usually one of the two, unless it's something that's very, very lightweight, like a China weight silk, you might see a very lightweight cotton being used for that. Okay, so this is the inside of a 1870s skirt. She is ginormous. She also has a detachable train. This is removable, so she can be worn for day or for evening. But what I want to show you here, what's important about her are her layers for this conversation. Just her train alone has the silk satin on one side. There's the wool tape. This is not bound, it's just applied flat, but then she's completely faced in a matching, really coarse, just worsted wool. The ruffles, or pleats I should say, for this, you see here, the box pleats, the satin that has been faced in black tarlatan, just like so, and then the twill tape is just used to help hold the pleats in place. But you can see tarlatan is here underneath, so they just brought the silk here up as far as it needed to, but then this is tarlatan here. So the train is just tarlatan, wool, and silk, and then the skirt itself is the same. So they were made at the same time, obviously. Here you can see they used tarlatan to help reinforce the buttons. So that's what that is. So we have the silk, we have the wool braid, we have a wool facing, and then we have tarlatan. And that's it. I've seen a lot of people, when they're working on their skirts, want to really reinforce the bottom, which isn't wrong. It's just how they go about doing it. None of my garments, none of them, have horsehair in the hem. There are some very structured skirts in my collection, and the way that they structure the skirts is not through horsehair or really stiff, rigid materials. It's usually through layers of polished cotton, tarlatan if you need something with structure in it, and then how they bind the bottom, which is actually tip number 4. Kind of hard to see. I'm gonna try to explain it. But so this circa 1883-84 bustle skirt, the hem has the wool tape that you see here. And then here's where it's kind of worn off, so you can see how it's been attached. So it was stitched by machine that way, right side's folded over. But in here, you can see how thick the hem is down here. And that is because it has multiple layers of fabric. There's no horsehair in this, but it has multiple layers of fabric to help give a lot of weight and body to this skirt. So we have the cotton layer, and then behind the cotton layer, there is a tarlatan layer there. And then there's the silk, and then there's the wool braid. And so that's at least from what I can see. And that is why this is so beefy and sturdy, but it's not awkward. It still has movement because all of the materials work together to kind of create this heft. Same thing goes for the bodice here. You don't need to overdo this. It's just about layering this basically very similar weight materials to help create weight and structure and body. You don't need to overstructure these garments. You don't need to do any of that. A little bit of boning, which is also still optional for a lot of the period. And then maybe some tarlatan in very strategic places like cuffs, very stiff canvas in the collar to help give it its shape. Never horsehair though. It's always cottons, tarlatans, canvas. That's it. Think creatively when it comes to your scraps, and think creatively when it comes to utilizing linen fabric or cotton fabric, but don't feel like you have to go out and buy specialty fabrics or materials to create that historically accurate garment, because you don't. They didn't. You don't have to either. This has been my favorite thing, actually, and that is the way that you hem your skirts throughout the entire Victorian era is with wool braid at the end, and you bind it. And this makes actually loads of sense when you think about it, because especially if you're dealing with something that is a bit of a nicer silk, whether it's a kind of lighter weight China weight silk like this or silk taffeta, all of my skirts are bound in just a thin 1/2 inch wide wool braid that matches the color of the fabric. It is to help protect the silk of the skirt, so that way it won't get worn out as quickly. It also helps hold the skirt shape out as well. It helps give it some additional structure, and it's literally everything. The exceptions to this rule are 2 to 3 garments. The pieces that have tarlatan, that are completely faced in tarlatan, they're kind of just folded up, but they're also over structures that they wouldn't drag the ground or touch the ground, so it makes more sense. Or it's actually just workaday skirts. So my very plain simple wool skirts, they don't have that additional wool braid, but they're also working skirts and they don't touch the ground, so they don't do that. But if you have something that touches the ground and it's just like a good skirt like this, whether it's 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, find your hem. That's how you want to do it. If you don't have wool tape, because that is hard to find, you find in the Butterick dressmaking manual and also in some originals that they used bias strips of cotton velveteen. It does the same thing. It serves the same purpose. So ultimately, the goal here is bind your hems. And also that makes it like a lot easier to deal with if you think about it. So there's that.
La la do 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 dee. This is a song about hand sewing your sleeves so you don't ugly cry in the bathroom alone. La la do do dee da.
Final tip, hand sew in your sleeves. The sewing machine was invented in 1846. Now, I'm not saying that it would have been easy to sew your sleeves in by machine, because it really wouldn't have been, but I have a hard time sewing sleeves in by a machine today. I find it really frustrating. And so regardless of if there's a sewing machine used in these bodices, if it's a couture piece, a homemade piece, the sleeves are stitched in using back stitches, and then the raw edges are overcast over. And it makes sense because sewing the sleeves by machine is just a pain in the butt. You can get it messed up, it can get caught, it's annoying. So when you're hand stitching the sleeves in, it just makes it a lot easier. So it's just a pro tip. It might not be one that you're fond of. You might be like, but I just want to get it sewn and I need to sew it on my machine. And I totally understand because I've been there too, but then it gets caught and then it's all wibbly and then you have to pick it out anyways because it doesn't look right. And you're just like, oh my God, I hate this. It's like, just stop. Just take the extra time and just back stitch your sleeves in by hand. It's all good. It's so much easier than doing it by machine. The result is going to be so much nicer than doing it by machine. Your blood pressure is not going to go up by doing it on a machine. Well, that went really fast. I thought I would have more to say, but apparently I don't. With that, my friends, that is your top 5 basic Victorian dressmaking techniques. I hope that you all found this video interesting. I hope that you found it helpful, especially if you are a maker. If you're not one of my makers watching this channel, I hope that you just enjoyed the B-roll and all the additional info when it comes to Victorian dressmaking. With that, my friends, I hope that you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you all back here next week with a new video. Happy sewing and have a good one. Bye.